business. Thank you, Angela, for recording the lecture. So as a reminder, we do record all the lectures. It will be available for you to watch the recording in usually within a couple of days. Please do follow along, ask any questions along the way. You can put your questions in the chat. We'll monitor the chat and we'll have plenty of time at the end to answer the questions that all of you might have. And you don't need to sit here and hear me talk. I'm going to pass it over to the one who actually knows what he's talking about. It's Ryan Johnson, our guest speaker from the County of San Diego's Department of Health. And that echo, yeah, no, it's okay, it's okay. All right, you can take it away whenever you're ready.
All right.
Something happened with the audio.
All right, let's see. From home, can you hear all right? Give me a thumbs up if you can.
I can hear you, Tanya, but I can't hear him.
Yep, okay, got a thumbs up.
All right. Well, hello, everybody.
I cannot hear anything from Ryan's audio.
I cannot hear anything from Ryan. Ryan is muted.
There it goes.
Wow.
Beautiful.
Well,
Now we can hear better.
for those of you that missed all of that at home, ask questions as we go, type them into the chat. I'll do a pause at each topic for today. So great. So these are the 5 business options I'm going to be talking about today. Temporary food facilities, mobile food facilities, and not all mobiles. I'm not doing the full food trucks. I'm doing more of the cart operations, sidewalk vending operations. I'll talk a little bit about catering, cottage food, and microenterprise home kitchens. The last 2 are our only 2 home-based business options that people can start, but there's a lot of limitations and restrictions on those, more so than the other ones. All right, so temporary food facilities. What is a temporary food facility? So if you've ever been to a fair or a festival, December Nights is coming up. That's one of our largest temporary food facility events. It's really a booth that operates at a fixed location at an approved community event. And so a community event is something that's kind of deemed for a wide variety of options, but it's going to be something that's only going to operate 1 or 2 days at the most, maybe 4 if it's a longer event. And then it's going to move on, but then you can move to another event and work there. So you're really just operating in conjunction with these events. You can't set up a booth anywhere in the county and sell whenever you want. So we have 2 options for this. You either can sell prepackaged food or do limited beverage service. And when we say prepackaged food, that's stuff that you would find like in the shelves of a grocery store. It's packaged, it's bagged, it's labeled, very limited. You don't prep it, you don't handle it. And then limited beverage service is really for some of the more crack and pour operations. So if somebody wants to sell beer or any kind of beverage that's not being mixed like a cocktail. And then we have unpackaged. And so unpackaged is any food that you want to prepare. And you're preparing that usually on site. Some people might do some pre-prep in a commercial kitchen ahead of time, but really nothing can be prepared at home before you go to a temporary event. So you're always going to be operating out of either a commercial kitchen or everything's done at that location within your booth. So to get a permit from us, and this is going to be the same format I'm going to go through for almost all of our programs here. Permit process, submit an application to us. It's hopefully relatively self-explanatory. We try to streamline our applications. You have standard operating procedures for how you're going to handle your food while you're at the event. We have a wide range to reach us, so you don't always have to come to our office. You can email them, you can mail them, you can fax them. The commissary agreement letters is for our annual permit. So if you're looking to do an event and you're going to work all year long, instead of just at one event at one time, you do need to work out of a commercial kitchen as your base of operations. So some people will kind of pass on that one and go the single event and just buy a permit every time they want to do an event, but it's more expensive. So if you want to save a little bit of money over the course of the year, you get the annual, but then you also have to have that commercial kitchen as your support structure. And then once we approve your application, you get a permit from us and you can work that event. If you're an annual, you just take that permit with you, whichever event you want to work, and you're kind of attached to the organizer of that event for their vendor list. So a few things that are really specific to temp events, the ability to demonstrate proper food safety techniques. We kind of verify that in 3 different ways. It's either a food safety certificate course. It's an 8-hour-long course. You need that if you're going to be an annual operator. You can do the food handler class, which is usually a 3-hour class. There's online options, there's in-class options. And that's good for single events or some of our other programs. Or the other approved method is demonstration of knowledge at the event if it's a single event. So when our staff comes out to do the inspection, we'll ask you questions. And if you can answer them properly, you're demonstrating adequate knowledge. So that way you're not going to get somebody sick. So if we say, how do you wash your hands? You're able to tell us, here's how I properly wash my hands in my booth. This is a little bit different because it's temporary in nature. So one of the big things that we have as ways that foodborne illness is transmitted is through improper hand washing. And so at an event, you're not able to bring a fully plumbed sink like you would find in your kitchen or at a commercial kitchen. So you've got to have a temporary setup. And our temporary setups is as simple as an igloo cooler filled with warm water, a bucket to catch all that runoff, soap and paper towels. So very important to have this built into your planning process if you want to go this route. If you're only doing prepackaged food, you don't need to have a hand washing station because you're not touching anything. There's no risk of contaminating the food that you're about to serve to somebody else. Again, these are kind of the main things that you need to control for. So protection from contamination, you basically have to store your food so nothing contaminates while you're on site. So think about if you're in a kitchen, you're in a building, you've got a roof, walls, doors that are closed. When you're outside, it's to the elements. So you've got wind, bugs, birds, tree, debris, everything's going to be there. So your food has to be stored in a way to prevent any of this stuff from getting in. So you've got to find ways to either put it in containers, lids on your food items, and then stored usually inside of your booth, because your booth, and I'll show you shortly, is going to help provide a kind of semblance of a permanent structure. And then approved source. So this is where it gets a little tricky. Approved source means I'm going to start it and I'll give you the caveat. You can't make food at home and then take it to a temp event. You've got to make it either on site. You've got to buy it from a commercial facility. So like a grocery store, Costco, something like that. You've got to pick up your food from somewhere that's approved to sell food. And then you can take it to the event and prepare it. Or if you're part of the Cottage food program, you can take your Cottage food product and sell it there. So it kind of allows you to kind of hybridize 2 different options if you want to do some home-based preparation. But really what we look at is where did the food come from? Was it purchased at a place that is approved to sell it? Or did you buy it off of somebody on the street that's selling something out of the back of their car? We don't want that. So the enclosures, this is kind of the semblance of what we try to do at these temporary events to create a little bit more of a barrier of protection while you're actually preparing food. Because think about it, as you're chopping vegetables, you're cooking stuff, you're working at your little makeshift cook's line, you don't want to be outdoors because stuff's going to fall into that food when you're working. So the first picture here kind of shows a general good setup. You've got a mesh screen around the side. It's very small mesh, so it allows airflow, so you don't bake inside of these tents, but it does keep everything else out from there. And you have like little windows cut in the front to do pass-through. So if anybody's gone to a community event, this is hopefully what you're seeing. But what you may see is what's there with the red X, where people just have tables set up and their food open to the air. And that is a bigger concern from us because our focus is always food safety, making sure nobody gets sick. And then the last thing here is just making sure your booth's identified. So this is a great example of how to identify your booths. Instead of just having a tent, you have to say, who are you? How do people find you? How do people say, oh, this is the booth I went to. This is where I purchased something in case something does happen. And there are requirements for the size of the lettering. You'll see on the slide here, just to make sure it's easily visible. The 3-inch and 1-inch is kind of a standard sizing for all of our operations, whether it's a booth or a cart. It just makes it easily readable to the public. Yes.
Sorry, one quick question
Yeah.
about the lettering and stuff like that. So in some vending events that I've seen, they don't really have, like, the booths are next to each other and you can't really see, or there's pretty much no walls except for in between the booths.
Right. I mean, they might do like a full line of like, just like the
Yeah.
food court, essentially. You can do like a sign on the front that kind of has your identifying. So sorry, for everybody at home, the question was, is what if the booths are set stacked side by side? Sometimes the organizers will provide these. How do you identify yourself when it's provided and it's not your own setup? You have signage on the front. So as long as you're identifying your booth, you can hang it off the top of the rack, you can hang it on your mesh, have a little stand on a front table that's right in front that people come up to. So just a way to be able to show people who you are. Yeah. Yes.
My question was a long-term question. Are you able to have all three sides enclosed and the front open and one wall exposed?
Yep. So the question was, can you only have 3 of the 4 sides enclosed per our retail food code? No. We want to have the food preparation area fully enclosed. Now, what some people will do is they'll put a wall up in the middle of their tent. So the back half has 4 walls. They prep back there, and then the front half is open to the public. So you get that kind of face-to-face interaction. You get to greet your customers. They're not looking at a wall, and then you're a little tiny cutout window. So we really do that. The other thing though, is if you do all your prep ahead of time, and then everything's just in like chafing dishes or cooling units, you can open up your booth. It's all packaged and containerized then, right? You open the lid, you serve a plate for somebody, you put a lid back down. It's the prep and cooking process that needs to be enclosed. So some places will do all their pre-prep first thing. They get there early, an hour ahead of time, chop everything, mix everything, start it all cooking, and then they put it up on their serving line. But if you're having like a flat grill that you are constantly keeping things open, you want to have that enclosed as well.
And I just wanted to clarify, if I have chafing dishes, I can have the front of my tent open because I'm not prepping food.
Because the chafing dish has a lid that creates your container and protecting your food.
Okay.
Yes. So chafing dishes are a great way to have if you pre-cook it and you're just hot holding for quick service, which is what you want to do. Cooking to order, you're gonna have a line
Yeah.
down the way for people waiting for you to cook their meals. So you always see everybody does all the stuff ready. So it's just funneling people through. Another question. That was it.
I was gonna clarify that, because I read in the,
Our guidebook?
that, prepping and cooking needs to be fully enclosed, and once you're done, you can open up the front.
Exactly. So that's what we encourage, because when you want that face-to-face interaction with your customers, it helps to not have to talk through a screen or a wall or a window or something. So yes, and there are times, and you guys will see this, you'll go out to events, nobody has their screens up. Our inspectors see this all the time. It's not a major issue. It's not going to close down a booth unless the weather's really bad. So if it's a windy day and stuff's blowing around and you don't have walls to put up, then we would have to say, I'm sorry, you can't operate because it's too unsafe for your food right now. But if we show up and your front wall's down, they'll mark it off and say, you need to have your walls. Do you at least have the screening? Yes, I have it right here. I just wanted to take it down in view. I'm not going to tell any of you guys to do that because it breaks what we're supposed to have you do, but it happens. And it's the reality of the situation of what we see out there. So I always want to have everybody following the guidelines. And then you get the few exceptions. Try not to be the exception. All right, permit fees. So I'm ending each section with a little bit just to kind of give you an idea of what the cost is going to be for each of these types of operations. So like I said, we've got 2 main categories for permits. We've got the prepackaged or limited beverage service. We have a single event permit and then the annual permit. And then the same goes for the unpackaged foods, single event versus annual. You can see the annual permit lets you work as many events as you want throughout the year, right? Imagine if you worked 4 events throughout the year and you're paying a single event price, you're spending a lot more money. Now, I don't know what the cost is for the commercial kitchen rentals and space rentals to store your equipment and store your food. And so that's the balance you've got to look at is what am I going to pay for my storage fees for that annual versus the savings I'm going to have for getting the annual permit versus paying it event by event. And then, yep, 1 second. And then the swap meet vendor single location. At a swap meet, you're only allowed to sell prepackaged food. So we have a handful of swap meets throughout the county. Kobe swap meet is a big one. There's one in Spring Valley that I've been to. So you can go set up a table there as long as you pay whatever you can. You need to get a permit from us to do so. And you can only do prepackaged food. So you can really just set up a table and sell your food there. It's a much lower permit because you can't do as much there and you're stuck to one location only. So you can't move around and operate anywhere else but that one swap meet with that permit. And then of course, if you submit your applications to us, within 14 days of the event happening. We do charge a late fee because we have to like kind of rush process that to make sure you get your permit before the event. So we want all stuff submitted at least 14 days. Our staff will tell you 30, but that 14-day window is key for us so we can make sure we can keep people getting permitted through the process. Yes.
I'm just curious, what's the difference between a swap meet and like an event at a temporary? Is it how they frame the event, or isn't it?
Well, temp events come and go. They move throughout the county. A swap meet is never going to move. It's always at that one location. So like this over in Sports Arena, they have the Kobe swap meet. It never moves. It just operates there. And so that's why it's a fixed location. You only can work there. So if you want to have the flexibility to work anywhere in the county, you want to go with the temp event. But your temp event still is tied to a community organized event that has an organizer that you're working with.
And TFF is good for the swap meet.
It's the same application process. We still want the same information, just a different fee. So
You
it's
still have to pay for another fee. Okay.
two separate permits. Yeah. So if you're a temp event vendor and you're doing an annual, you can't go work at a swap meet with that permit. You've got to get a permit for those swap meets. So they're two specific business types.
So is the fee is $104 per time you go there, or is that for the whole year?
That's just for that one spot per year.
Oh, for
So
one
it, yeah,
year.
so it's an annual permit. So, but you're limited to that one spot, and they usually only operate once a week, right? Because they'll have like a Saturday or Sunday or whatever their day is for that swap meet operation. Yes.
I think I'm not understanding really well how, so for example, at the swap meet, when people sell hamburgers or tacos and things like that, that's not prepackaged.
So depending on the swap meet you're at, I hope, so our question was, is that some swap meets, you'll see people selling open food and cooking. They should have a different permit for that because it's not part of the swap meet permitting process. So we have a mobile food program that lets them do that. Some swap meets, Spring Valley has a permanent kitchen that they've built and permitted. And so they'll do hot dogs out of there and act as a commissary. Mobile trucks can go there because they're operating under a mobile truck or a mobile cart permit. Yeah. So we separate them. The code specifically says if you're just going to be at the swap meet with your table and your booth set up, prepackaged food only, that's the only permit you can have. That's the 104. Anything else, we would permit you in whatever program you're selling, which is typically the only other thing we're going to allow there is the mobile food or an actual permanent brick and mortar. Yeah. Yes.
What is another food facility besides the commissary? For
For the annual permit. So her question was, is on here, it says approved commissary or other approved facility. A commissary is specific to what it allows to support kind of temporary vendors. Another approved facility is any other food or restaurant place. So if you've got a friend that owns a kitchen, maybe has a market that you can store your food at, or has like a little prep area in the back, that's another type of an approved facility. So we want it to have a health permit with us. So basically anything that has a health permit with us could be considered an appropriate place for you to store your stuff for the annual permit. A MEKHO does not, because it's not an approved. MEKHO's is its own little separate home pocket. So yes, you can't do a MEKHO in conjunction. I'll get to that during the MEKHO presentation of what they're restricted to. Hold on really quick. I want to get over to this gentleman. Can I come back to you?
Okay, so swap meet, vendor permits.
Yep.
Would the new street vendor permit also be allowed
No.
with the mobile food permits?
We'll get to that in, not for the swap meet. So a street vending, let me tie that in a little bit because it's a weird blend. So if we're talking just a temp event stand booth at a swap meet, that's what this is.
Okay.
We'll talk street vending and mobile food in a little bit.
Sorry, my last question.
Yes.
So how about cottage food? Can that operate as your commissary?
I'll get to that in a little bit in the cottage food thing. I know. It's almost like a choose your adventure one, not blend them all together. So cottage foods can't act as a commissary either, and we'll get to that as well. All right. Before I move on to mobile food and sidewalk, see, good transition. Thank you for setting that one up. Any questions from the chat on this? Great. All right. Mobile food facilities and sidewalk vending. This is a little different because there's two halves to this. Sidewalk vending is a city ordinance allowing people to sell food on public right-of-ways. Mobile food vending is retail food code statewide allowance that goes through us for permitting. They parallel each other, but we don't control the sidewalk vending portion of it. So our department regulates the retail food code as it applies to mobile food facility vending, which is our carts and our big food trucks. Sidewalk vending tells you where you can go sell that food for how long and in which format. So while you guys are, sidewalk vending is a very key, big, hot topic right now. We don't address or permit a sidewalk vendor. We permit a mobile food facility that then has to meet sidewalk vending requirements established by each city. So it's a little different where I focus on the mobile food facility aspect of it. If you then want to go out and sell, our thing says, talk to your local city that you want to sell and see what their allowances and requirements are to go sell in throughout their city. So like City of San Diego, they're the big ones. They just passed a new ordinance that it kind of has been floating around through the news. They require you to get a sidewalk vending permit. In order to do so, you got to take your health permit to them. So you need the health permit with us for the mobile food. Then they give you the sidewalk vending permit. So then you can go out throughout their city, and they have restrictions on where you're able to sell. We don't control that at all. We say, if you meet our food code requirements, you're fine to sell anywhere in the county unless restricted by that city on where you can sell. So with a swap meet, we would permit a mobile food cart. And if the swap meet vendor or the swap meet organizer lets you bring your cart in to sell, you can sell under your mobile food permit. If the city said you need a sidewalk vending permit as well, and I don't think they do because a swap meet's usually on private property. It's probably not going to overlap. So you would need the mobile food cart, and you could take your cart to the swap meet, sell whatever food we've approved you to off that cart, as long as the swap meet allows you in, and you don't need another swap meet permit to do so because you're already operating under the allowance of your mobile food permit. That kind of answer your question from earlier.
Kind of.
Ask again and I'll see if I can blend it.
Okay. So I took my TFF and all my other stuff that the city wanted and got approved for sidewalk vending, and I got my permit and everything.
Was it the city of San Diego?
Yes, sir.
They should not have given you a sidewalk
So
vending
they gave-
permit.
So they gave me the permit for everything that I have.
Okay.
And they gave me the permit. And then, so that's where I'm like confused, because the health department's saying that I can't vend on the sidewalk until I get a mobile food facility. But the
Yes.
city already told me I could.
Right. I'm going to cover yours later. I'll cover yours on the side because yours is a one-off. Pretty much,
And I
the
just. don't-
city should not have issued you a sidewalk vending permit with a temp event health permit from us. They're only supposed to issue it with a mobile food permit. And that's why we're telling you, you can't set up the temp event. That was the first category. Temp events have to be with a community event. Mobile food is where you can take it anywhere out in the county and sell off of your cart. So the city should not have issued you the sidewalk vending permit because you don't have the right operation permit from us to do sidewalk vending. That's why when we see a temp event vendor setting up on the sidewalk, we'll say, you don't have the right permit. You're only allowed to sell from a mobile cart in the county. Temp events, you have to be part of a community event to do so. So we can.
But who has seniority over my sidewalk vending permit?
Sidewalk vending permit is handled by the city. We will address you as operating outside of the scope of your health permit by operating a temp event setup.
And I could still
No.
get a ticket.
You'll still be issued a notice of violation for that. Yes. So I can dig more into that with you afterwards on that because it's more of a specialized situation, but I can get you back on the right track. For anybody else that's listening, it's more of a combination of us working with the cities to understand what kind of permits the state law allows to be selling and where, and that's kind of where I'm building in for the presentation today of what permits and where you can take each one. So mobile food facilities, any kind of food sales off of a mobile cart requires a health permit. I'm not going to get into it now because it's a big detailed process, but there's a new law that starts in January that's going to tweak what you can do off of a cart. I'll come back around at another date. You guys can reach out to our department. We'll help you with that, but I'm going to give you the bare bones of what's legal now for mobile food vending. You do have to operate in conjunction with a commissary or approved retail restaurant. It's confusing because they're both very similar, but a commissary usually is specific just to mobile cart operations. Retail food restaurants is any other health permitted facility. They both have a health permit with us. You do need your food handler certification, whether it's the food safety manager cert or the food handler card, depending on the kind of food and the scope that you're doing. And it has to be sold from the mobile food facility. Vendors are unable to set up a stationary table to sell food items within the county. So that's where it comes with the problem with the stationary temp event booth. You got to decide what kind of cart you want to do. So are you going to sell it packaged or open? Each one is going to have a different requirement, different permit fees, different process through us. Like I said, prepackaged food is everything that's already wrapped up. Open food is where you might be making that on the cart. So typically those are your standard non-bacon wrapped hot dog carts, churro carts, coffee carts, those sort of things are open food. So I'm already getting ahead of myself. Here's the cart types that we permit typically for a prepackaged cart. These are ice cream. So you see a lot of the ice cream push carts, tamale carts, because a tamale in its wrapper is still considered packaged. It's the one exception that was issued in our state law. And uncut produce. It's a whole piece of fruit or produce. So as long as you're not slicing it or chopping it up, you can sell that off of the cart. Because once you slice it, some fruits are potentially hazardous. Seems weird, but watermelons are one of the big ones. So cantaloupes, watermelons, those sort of things. Once you slice it, we consider it potentially hazardous. It has to be refrigerated. So open food or beverage carts, these are your coffee carts, your hot dogs, your churros, pretzels, shaved ice. There are very specific restrictions on what we call limited food prep that can be done off of these carts. So it's very challenging to try to build a cart that gives you the same allowance that you could do at a temp event, where you could have a full kitchen in that booth, or at a restaurant where you can have, full kitchen in the permanent sense. So it is limited, and I've got some on here that'll help you probably talk about. I hope I put it on here for limited food prep. And then where do you store the cart? So right now, like I said, you've got to go to a commissary. So it's either a traditional commissary or non-traditional. And the non-traditional is another health permitted facility here in the county. This will change next year. There are some allowances that could potentially let you store your cart at your home, but all your food has to be stored in a commercial facility anyways. So now you have two spots you got to deal with your cart. It's not very practical, but it opens up the options for some services, not all of them. And again, we'll have a lot of outreach going off next year that'll help people that are looking to start a mobile food program at that part. Where do you want to sell? So this goes back to getting the right licenses from the jurisdiction you want to sell in. Every city is different. Some of them require business licenses, some of them require sellers permits, and then some of them, of course, will give you restrictions on where you can sell and for how long. So we always say contact your code enforcement or zoning department, and they'll let you know what those restrictions are. We'll permit you per state law. They will restrict you for their own jurisdictional ordinances. And then how do you get your cart approved? So this is where it starts to get a little bit more detailed for getting an approval for us, because we have to review and approve your cart before you get a health permit. So it's a two-step process now. One, you have to submit actual detailed drawings, blueprints, so to speak, of your cart, spec sheets, everything that goes into there. We review that, and then you build it or buy it. We have a lot of people that'll buy a cart, bring it to us, and then we'll review it and say, this doesn't meet state law. I'm sorry, we can't permit this. And people are out a lot of money. So we say, before you buy it, before you build it, get it approved, and then we'll get you through the rest of the process. Then you can go start building it. Then you can go purchase it. That way, what you're buying is going to be able to be used for your business operation. So there are a few things that get submitted. Our team walks you through this process whenever you're at that point. So really just wanted to let you know is you start with our plan review division, and then you work on to get the health permit as your secondary part. So when you do that, we don't require a lot of information to get a health permit. First, your cart gets approved by plan check. You fill out the application, you give us your business license or seller's permit for where you're really going to be operating out of, and then a photo ID. And it doesn't have to be government issued. It's just a photo ID. So we know we're matching you to the permit we're about to issue. And then once everything's cleared, you get your health permit, you get to go get your stickers on your cart, you get to start operating. So here's our fees. Now, with the last fees, it was a one fee for your annual permit. This one here, you have your two fees. You've got your plan submittal fees. So those are the fees just to get the cart reviewed and approved. Then you've got your permit fees that you pay afterwards. So you would add the two of these together, depending on whether you're doing the prepackaged or the open food and beverage cart. So it starts to get a little bit more expensive at this one because you've got the two-step process. Plus you're paying for the cart. And what I've heard is some of these limited food prep carts are getting $5,000, $7,000 or more because you've got to have power to them, refrigeration to them, hand washing sinks have to be built on. You've got water tanks on them, wastewater tanks on them because you got to put that stuff somewhere. So it starts to be a little bit more of a detailed business investment as opposed to a temp event where it's an easy up, it's some walls and your tables and your cooking equipment that you bring out. All right. Any questions on the mobile food that I haven't already addressed from at home in the room? Okay. Catering. We're halfway through, guys. Catering's interesting because catering is done outside, offsite, but you still are tied to a permanent location that has a health permit and it has a full kitchen for you to do most of your prep work. We issue 3 types of catering permits, 2.5, I'll call it. We have full service catering. That's the one that you guys are normally used to. You have a birthday party, you have a wedding, you hire a caterer, they come out and serve food for your entire event. Direct sales catering and a host facility are the two that are tied together. And this is a new concept that got written into our code maybe a year or two ago. And it allows for somebody, because caterers, you have to have it as a pre-order, right? If you're catering, somebody's placed an order and said, I have 50 people I want to feed on this date. Can you please come out? Direct sales lets you do the same things as a caterer, but people can come up and buy individual meals for you. But this has to be tied to the host facility. And so typically those are wineries, breweries, maybe a business center or business park that says, hey, you know what? I've got a ton of people that are in this building and I want to be able to have them come out and have lunch. So I'm going to bring in this direct sales caterer that can sell their individual meal options. But the host facility has to have infrastructure to support the direct sales caterer. So that's why they're kind of paired up. It requires 2 permits. We will not issue a direct sales catering permit without the host facility already permitted and tied to you. So if you're coming in for the direct sales option, it's the more restrictive because you can only operate at certain locations. Catering, you can operate as to whoever you can get to buy in for your business and how well your marketing works for that. Yes.
Quick question. So I already have my full service.
Okay.
Am I able to do my direct sales if I have the host? You said?
If you're tied to a host facility, and honestly, I don't know the answer. She asked, if you've got a full service catering, can you also do direct sales? You have to be tied to a host. I think you don't need a second permit, but reach out to us afterwards and we can look that one up for you.
Okay.
Because I believe your full service will allow you to do both. We just tag you as it, but you have to provide us the host facility that you're going to be working out of. So, and you're still limited to the same kind of limited service that you can do on site as you would normally. And you still have to have your commercial kitchen that you're working out of.
Right,
So I don't believe that you need 2 permits, but I'll talk to somebody that handles this program more so than I do. So I kind of already went through this. This is what we define as a caterer. It's really, you're prepping everything at that permanent facility and then you're taking it off site to serve it, or you're doing limited food prep. And limited food prep is really just like heating, maybe some limited cooking, but you're not chopping a bunch of vegetables out there on a table behind you. You've already done all that. So you've done all your pre-prep at your kitchen and you come out and you're basically is heat and serve or just keep it hot. And that's typically what you see is when you get an event catered, there are some that if you might get like somebody comes out and serves and cooks, you can cook and serve right from your cooking service, but they shouldn't be doing all the dicing and chopping of any vegetables while they're there. So this is kind of what I already went through for the full service direct sales options. And one is predetermined number of guests. The other one is it's consumers as tied to that host facility operation. So that's why host facilities are breweries, wineries, distilleries. That's our main place that we see this. Yes.
What if I had an event or not an event, what if I do catering, but I say I'm teaching them a class and get them involved? Do I have to still get a catering?
You won't be able to teach a class remotely. You can only do cooking classes out of a permanent food facility. And we have there's
I could go to their house and do a
private chefs.
Yeah.
If you're using their equipment and their food, you can be a business as a private chef. But if you can't take all of your stuff to their house, use your own cooking stuff, that would be that's going to be a little bit of a catering and cooking on site. You're still going to be limited to what you can do. You can't go to their house and still do all the prep and cooking because it's not an approved kitchen. So even though you're doing a cooking class on site, you're better off using their stuff and showing up and showing them how to cook with what they've got there.
And I don't need a catering.
Nope, because you're not catering anything. You're just an educator. Exactly. So that's and that's why private chefs kind of have the same model is they go to somebody's house, use all of their equipment. We don't permit a private chef because they're not actually bringing their stuff and cooking for them. They're just going to the house and using what's there.
And you can have them still purchase all the food. Like
You need to have them purchase. Yes.
But okay.
Yeah. So it's like, hey, here's all the ingredients that you need for tonight. Let me come over to your house if you want to bring some friends and I'll show you guys how to make this meal out of what you guys cooked. Because then you're just teaching them. You're not bringing any of your stuff. You don't have to store it anywhere. So the private chef option is its own little path. It's the one thing that we don't permit, but it's very specific as in you have to just show up.
There wouldn't be any liability for that. When if you were a private chef and they brought their own food and you're cooking it,
In which way, what liability are you concerned with? Like somebody getting sick or getting like penalized for it?
Someone getting sick.
I mean, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't talk about what they could or could not do for it. I would say most people that they start any business, your insurance is going to be your key thing because we get a lot of places that are starting business that you want to have that in case something happens. I mean, we live in a society where a lot of people do look for taking advantage of other businesses and they'll sue whether or not it's validated or not. And tracking down a foodborne illness to a specific thing is challenging. It's part of what we do. And it's very hard for us to pinpoint it came from this place. Most people always say it's the last thing I ate. It's not. It's the thing you ate probably the day before. It was that food you left on your counter while you were barbecuing with your friends, not the McDonald's you went to for breakfast that morning. So here's the host facility. It does limit the amount of time that a direct sales caterer can operate there. So you only have 4 hours in a 12-hour period that a direct sale caterer can operate at a host facility. So it's really limiting the time frame because it reduces the risk. 4 hours is not a long time. So if food isn't held at the right temperature, there is a problem. It reduces the chance of bacterial growth. So it's a limited scope. It's supposed to be temporary. It's supposed to be to pop in, do some sales, and then leave. Not to set up at the host facility all day long like a permanent restaurant. So really, because when you cater an event, you don't cater all day, you cater for the meal. And so this was trying to find the balance between the two.
Is that
All right, so, oh, it's not small on your screen, it's tiny on mine. So when I talk about limited food prep, this is what is when I talked about our carts for limited food prep and our caterers, this is what we identify as what you can do as a caterer or a cart operation and what you cannot do. So it's limited, right? Heat, fry, bake, roast, popcorn. So you can drop stuff in a deep fryer and then serve it directly. I don't see many people bake stuff as limited food prep, but you could. But the shaved ice, blending stuff for like coffee drinks, the hot dogs, and then assembling of food. So when you assemble food, you've got everything pre-portioned into little. So if you want to make sandwiches, you've got your meat portioned, your toppings portioned, and your bread portioned, and you're just kind of putting them together and serving it off. I couldn't have a big pan of like turkey and start taking pieces off of there to serve as I go. I have to already set it up. So all I'm literally doing is just putting two things together and serving it off. What you can't do, slice and chop food. It has to be done on a cooking surface, which is very hard to do for most things that you want for your thing. You can't thaw. You can't cool anything. I've never heard of anybody grinding meat up at at an event, but they put it in there just in case. Reheating. This is going to change a little bit. Part of the changes that went into effect with our mobile food operation is expanding this definition, but it doesn't go into effect until January. Like I said, it does give you more options for hot holding. And that was the hardest part that people had for limited food prep is you can't hot hold a bulk amount. You can hot hold your individual portions, right? But now what it's going to change to is you can bring out a pan, hot hold it, and then portion it out on site. So that's going to be a good benefit. It's going to open up the opportunities for mobile food carts. And that's going to be updated in state law as of January.
Side note on that, are you, as a temporary food,
Huh?
can I bring something cold from the company? Like, let's say it's a chili, or
Yep.
whatever. Bring it cold, already prepped.
Yep.
Bring it cold to the event. And then, if I need more, because I already have it hot there, I bring out my hot pan, bring that up to temp. Or portion it out, bring that up to temp and serve it.
Yeah. So the question is as a temp event, can you bring and reheat at the temp event? Yes, you can. You cannot cool at a temp event. That's not allowed. You got to serve it all that day and you're done. But yes, you can bring a bulk amount and then throw it onto a grill, a warmer, a burner, heat it up to the right temperature, and then put it on your hot holding units. Absolutely. So it's really weird because you start to wonder, well, why can I do that at a temp event? I can't do that off of a cart. State law the easiest answer is state law pocketed different business operations and gave them different allowances. The temp event is made to be a temporary restaurant. The mobile cart is made to be portable. You can push this thing around, you can go wherever you want. So they had to kind of put it into the structure of where's the greater risk of what you're doing and where you're at. Offsite catering events. So when you are catering, I'm not going to go through all of these. These are a lot. This is just what you got to make sure. You're not in a kitchen anymore. You're outside still. So this applies to almost everything you're going to do, whether it's a temp event or a catering operation, is you've just got to make sure you're taking the steps to prevent somebody from getting sick. And that it really involves proper hygiene, proper utensil storage, proper food storage. The biggest things that leads to somebody getting sick. For catering, you can use an open air barbecue or outdoor wood burning ovens. Also works for temp events. Doesn't work for a lot of our other permit options though. So mobiles do not have the option for open air barbecues or wood burning ovens as part of their mobile. It's got to be contained in the mobile itself. So for documents on the catering, this is kind of the list of things. Our team is able to walk you through all of this. So if you call us and say, I want to start a catering business, what do I need to do? We're going to tell you all this. We're going to give you all the paperwork you need, tell you what to submit, give you all the fees. But it's really application. So plan check for a caterer, we have to go inspect your kitchen that you're operating at as your base of operations. So that's why our plan check team's involved. It's really just an on-site evaluation to make sure they have space to take you on as another vendor for storage and food prep. And then your standard operating procedures. How are you doing everything? We want to kind of see, basically tell us how you're going to run your business from the food aspect, not from the business back end, but what are you doing from start to finish with your food? The commissary agreement, that's just the legal thing that you're working with the commissary to say, yes, I'm allowed to access your property to store and prep my food. Equipment spec sheets, menu, all of this stuff kind of helps paint the picture of what you're doing, because we're not always going to be there when you're doing your catering events. We're not going to somebody's backyard barbecue and inspecting you guys at a birthday party, and we're not showing up at weddings, although it might be kind of fun to take a look at the caterers that are there setting up. We want to look at where are you starting? How are you prepping it? And then do you have all the knowledge that you need to do it safely when you're out there? So here's our catering fees. Catering fees are a little bit interesting because you've got 2 plan check fees. You've got one to review all of your paperwork, and you've got one to go out and review your site to make sure the kitchen is appropriate for you. If you want to build a catering facility, so don't freak out about the $1,300 plan check submittal fee there. That's if you're building a catering kitchen for people to come and use. And it says plus because it depends on the size of the kitchen you're building. It scales up. This is the smallest amount, but that's just our review fee. That's not all of your building fees as well. And then you've got your annual health permit fee is the $675. And then the host facility permit, this is what the facility that you're operating at has to pay. This isn't for you as the caterer to pay, but the host facility operation has to pay that fee, and it's $195 annually. It's a very minor fee, but it's for us to be able to go out and make sure that they still have the supporting infrastructure that you need. No additional charge for an existing restaurant to do catering. So if you happen to start a restaurant business, you're allowed to cater as an extension of that restaurant business. You don't need a secondary permit to do it. But you're paying for all of the restaurant costs. So it's a wash. Yes.
So if you're operating out of a commissary kitchen, why do you gotta pay for a plan check? Shouldn't they already be permitted and already passed? And why am I paying you guys to come and check something that should already be?
It's a great question. So our question was, if we're already approving a commissary to have a health permit, why is a caterer paying us to come back out? We're coming back out to evaluate your operation being added to their business. So we permitted them to make sure, do they have the right refrigeration system, cook's line, restrooms, mop sink, janitorial sink, build out's fine. But now, as each caterer tries to stack into that place, is there space to support you for your food storage, your equipment storage? And so that's what we do, is that evaluation to make sure, because people come and go out of those a lot, and there's a capacity. So that's why we do that. And that's why it's a field consultation. It's a lower end fee compared to what the kitchen actually had to do. Really, that's just paying for our time to go out and do the evaluation. All right, down to the last 2. These are our home-based operations. So this is, I'm not going to say near and dear to my heart because I don't run them, but I have been involved in our home-based businesses since they all started like 8 years ago when cottage food law became a law. I've become our home-based subject matter expert and have dealt with everything for this, as well as our MEKHOs, which is next. So these are the 2 topics that I present most on, and I get pulled in to help people start these businesses a little bit more. And this is from my perspective, from an agency perspective. I started this 15 plus years ago, and the answer we always had was, no, you can't do anything at home. It's not allowed. Always have to do it at a commercial kitchen. And then this came around, and it changed a lot of the mindset for local and health officers throughout the state, because this was something that we were trained could never be done. And then now it is. So it was a different shift for us, but it opens up a lot of opportunities for small businesses because you're not paying your overhead costs. You get to get a little low entry thing to get your business started, make the money, get your support of all of your customers. And then we want you to get into that bigger restaurant. We want you to build up into a bigger one and expand your business. So cottage food is going to be very limited, and then it's going to expand into the MEKHOs. So cottage food started off to really open the door. So this is selling packaged food, essentially your final product's packaged food. But the kicker is it's non-potentially hazardous. And this is our word we use a lot. It means it's shelf stable, doesn't need refrigeration, doesn't need to have any heat source to it. So I always tell people, walk down your grocery store aisles. That's essentially what cottage food lets you make, because it can sit out on a shelf and it's not going to grow bacteria. It might mold eventually, like breads and stuff, but it's a low risk. It's very low risk from what we look at from a health and safety standpoint. And you have 2 paths to sell. You can either sell indirectly. So that means you're selling to a business or a retail store or a market or a coffee shop, and then they sell your product for you, or you sell directly to your customers. So you can go drop it off. They can come pick it up from your house. but you're directly selling that. You can work, and I think I have this in my slide. You can work as part of a temp event as a cottage food operator too. So we register our Class A's and we permit our Class B's, and I'll get to that a little bit more of the difference. You're allowed one full-time employee that's not part of your house. So if you have your family helping you out, they don't count as employees. So it becomes like a family operation. You need to hire somebody to go work for you out at an event or something, or to bring in to help you with food deliveries. You're only allowed a full-time equivalent. So you can have 2 people work part-time, you can have 3 people work part-time, as long as it's not more than 40 hours a week combined. This makes a lot of people upset in the MEKHO Microenterprise operations. Cottage Foods just got a huge jump in how much they can sell a year. It used to be $50,000 max for both of them, maybe 20, maybe 50. It's been a long time since I looked at the values. They just raised it to $75,000 in gross sales out of a cottage food operation from your home, and 150, which is huge. And that's gross sales. You still got to take all your costs out of that, right? But that's still, I mean, that's a little bit more of a better business than trying to do $50,000 in gross sales. Because after you take out all your costs, $50,000 is not a lot of income. This actually sets it up to be a more of a lucrative option for somebody, but you're limited on your products. So you got to sell a lot of bread to get up to $75,000. They're a little bit different because there's very specific requirements and restrictions for food facilities. Cottage Foods are not a food facility, which is why they can't do a lot of supporting infrastructure for other businesses. They're a standalone, small little pocket. So all your food prep has to be done inside. Nothing can be done outside. You can't have an outdoor oven. You can't do, I mean, barbecue's not allowed anyways. And you've got to make sure you can separate what you do at home with your cottage food. And this is where it gets tricky, right? Myself, I've got kids and pets. I've got to make sure if I'm a cottage food operator, they're not allowed in the kitchen when I'm operating. The food I'm using for that has to be separated off so people don't access it. I used to tell people this when I was doing the inspections of them. As a kid growing up, I would chug out of my milk cartons and just go and chug them down. You got to make sure your kids aren't doing that, because that's the problem is keeping that separation so your family knows. Some people will actually have 2 refrigerators. Sometimes they'll do one for their cottage food and one for their home stuff. The problem is your cottage food stuff can't be in a garage. It's got to be your main kitchen inside. So a lot of people have shifted their home refrigerators outside, or they just have labeled shelves, or they just teach their kids not to do what I did as a kid, and get everything, make everything disgusting. So the smoking, the kids, the animals, that's standard for any restaurant. It really, hopefully you guys can all understand why it poses a huge risk to contaminate your food. So here's our 2 different types. Class A is only direct sales. New law updated, and I don't think I updated on here. You can now ship as a Class A as long as it's within the state. So it does allow you to sell to people and expand your business outside of your local jurisdiction. Before you had to go and drop it off and deliver it, they've allowed you to use third-party services now to get your product out. But you can also do it directly. So bake sales, food swaps, holiday bazaars. Now this is straight from our code language. I don't know what half of these things are sometimes. Holiday bazaars to me is a temp event. So it's odd that they have that as the same. Farm stands, farmers markets, temporary events. So if you're a Class A business, you can go to a temp event and sell your food and not need another permit, which is a great option to kind of expand how you're selling directly to your customers. Now, if you try to sample it while you're there, you need a new permit because you're not opening the food, you're preparing it, you're handing out small things. But from a perspective of if you keep it packaged, we have a lot of cottage food vendors that will go work at a temp event and they don't need that second permit while they're there. They're going to use their cottage food. So you're going to get 2 for the price of 1. Class B lets you sell indirectly. So this is great if you have a good working relationship with local markets, local coffee shop owners that really thrive on small business support. You can sell your product to them and then they become your seller. So if I go into a coffee shop, I can see Ryan's cookies that are being sold and it'll say, made on a home kitchen, or you can even sell to restaurants that want to use your product as part of their menu offering. So it's really good for you to kind of give another option to get your expense, not directly to the customer that's going to eat it, but somebody that's then eventually going to do all the work for you. So you got to find your one customer, they sell it to theirs. They've already got the customer base. The reason that this one requires the permit, it also gets inspected. There's a higher fee because now there's a higher risk. You have a larger scope of distribution that can be done. So we need to make sure that there's going to be a little bit more controls and oversight in place for it. So approved products, this is the categories that you can sell as part of a cottage food. This is it. Local and environmental health agencies can't change this, can't approve anything else. This is state state regulated. So if somebody wants to add a product and say, hey, I have this great thing, I don't think it's potentially hazardous, I think it's shelf stable, they have to work with the state Department of Public Health to get that added to their list. They have a process where you can submit a request. They review every year all these requests, and they have every year they'll add new categories, new clarifications, new things. But I mean, look at what these options are. Baked goods, so no cream, no custards, no meat fillings, because those are all potentially hazardous. So baked goods, that's your breads, cakes, cupcakes, candy. Extracts is some people will make like vanilla extracts or flavored extracts for to add to other products. Dried foods, frostings, honey, sorghum syrup. Never heard of this before this program. It's another plant-based sweet honey-like product. Fruit, butters, jams, and jellies. There are specific restrictions in that the CDC, not the CDC, the FDA puts out for what you can and can't put in a jam or jelly. But this is where we started this program. A lot of people did baked goods and jams. Nuts, powdered drinks, vinegars. So basically all of this stuff is going to be very easy to produce and has a low risk to the customers. So our application process, I'd like to think it's relatively easy and streamlined. You need a business license from the city that you're going to be working out of. Some cities require you to get a permit through us first. If they don't, we require you to get a license from them for your business before you come to us. Depending on the city, some of them take a little while, so plan accordingly for your time. We have an application packet. You can fill it out online, submit it. We want to see sample labels because cottage food is very specific. You have to make your labels, and I'll show you some examples here shortly. Nobody's really on wells in any of our urban areas here, but if you live out in some of our rural areas and you're on a well, we have to have that water tested to make sure it's safe to be used in a food facility. And then of course you need food handler training. And our goal is to get all of this reviewed and back to you within 10 days of getting the paperwork. And at least get you a response saying, hey, we have a high volume of applicants now. It's going to take longer, but we really want to try to make this a faster process for people to get a business up and running. Because if you're Class A, we don't have to inspect you. We just need to verify that you've got everything established before you get started. So our labels, this is very specific. If you ever go out and look at a product label, I look at them a lot now, but I mean, take the products over there, little hot cocoa box over there. This is what it's trying to have you mirror with your product. The same stuff that you're going to find on there is what the state is requiring everybody to put on their product. So name of your business, the address, where this is made, what the product is. You have to say made in a home kitchen. This one's very specific and it has to be in 12-point font. So you can't make very tiny letters that say made in a home kitchen so nobody sees it. You have to actually identify this was made at a house, not at a commercial site. You do have to put the ingredients on there. You have to put the allergens because people do have allergies. So you do have to declare those. There are 8, and I think they just added a 9th one recently. You put the weight, and it's in ounces and grams or pounds. You can't just put a count like, hey, I'm doing cookies. It's 6. You still have to have a weight established for all of these. You put your registration or permit number on there and the name of the county that issued it, so it's able to be traced back to where it went. Nutritional labeling, that's what you see on almost every box. You know, you got the calories, you got the fat, the sugar, the salts. You only need that for cottage food products if you make a nutritional claim. So that's like fat-free, low sodium, high fiber, whatever it is, that's when you now have to create and develop a nutritional label. Even people that want to do gluten-free, because you've claimed it as free of something, you now have to do a nutritional label. So I always tell people, just say no gluten. You know, it's hard because the state established specific keywords that are triggers for this. So there's ways to still identify what you're doing without having to do that more, the more work on your labels. And then you can have 2 labels, and I'll show you some examples that I put together for this. And if you do want to call your product organic, you have to have the USDA certify your product as organic. So you can put your ingredients, if your ingredients that you get are certified organic, so I'm using organic cane sugar as an ingredient, you put that in your ingredient list, absolutely. You just can't call your product organic unless you're certified. To some people, it's a big deal. To everybody else, they're like, I just want to sell food and hope people buy it. So here's our label samples. You got a primary one, or you can split it into 2. I mean, and it's all kind of smashed in there. So made in home kitchen, that's the key one. Everything else, you just got to kind of have everything listed out on it. And this would go right onto your box, right onto your package, whatever it is. And it does get tricky when you start to do combo packs, like, hey, I want to do a variety pack of chocolates. Your labels have to identify each chocolate. So you can say variety pack of chocolates, but then your ingredients has to list out each type in there. So it gets a little bit tricky. Cakes get a little bit odd because they're like, well, I have like 10 different combinations they can pick from. Well, make a label for each combination and slap them on that box when you go deliver it. As long as it's on there, we just need to have it available. So now how does it tie to community events? Now I left farmers markets in here and I didn't really talk about farmers markets. Farmers markets are a community event. They're a temp event. They're tied to a Department of Agriculture's farmers portion. And then they have that temp event as a combo. So we call it a certified farmers market. Technically, we only permit the temp event that's attached to the certified farmers market portion of it. But here's what you can do. If you're selling just your prepackaged food at any of these two options, you don't need an extra permit for it. This is great for you to expand your business options without having to pay for extra permits. If you want to sample and you're doing open sampling, you need to get the temp event permit to go with that. What I tell people is package your samples ahead of time, slap a label on them, don't pay for extra permits on site. It just adds more requirements for you to set up a place to sample your product. However, as farmers markets go, most people like to come by and sample it before they buy it. So it's kind of depends on what you want to do. But then I also talked to a lot of cottage food vendors that are like, I'm just wasting money giving away food because people will sample and just keep on walking by. And it's harder because it's a bigger impact to what you guys are trying to do. And here are the two fees. We have an initial fee and a renewal fee. This is the only program where we have two different fees for your annual permit. The initial is higher because we have to do all of the review of your paperwork. And then the renewal is less because if it's the Class A, we're just doing the processing of your annual permit each year. If it's Class B, we're doing that inspection. So that inspection is annual for a Class B. The initial adds on all of the paperwork SOP review that we need to do. All right, last one. I hope I still have time. I know I'm pushing the 6:30, so I hope everybody's still good. No questions yet to deal with from the home? Okay, all right. MEKHOs. I'm only going to say MEKHOs from here on out. It's too lengthy to always say microenterprise home kitchen operations. This was what I called cottage food on steroids because it basically took the cottage food program and opened it up to make a home-based kitchen. So now, instead of just doing those packaged food items, you now can become a restaurant at your house. But there's still some specific restrictions that are as part of this program. And unfortunately, it's not as balanced as the cottage food. And you'll kind of see here. So it's a home, an apartment, a combo or a condo. This is where you're running a restaurant out of it. You're limited though, and this is the kicker for this program. You have $50,000 in gross sales. So that's the most you can sell before you take out all of your costs. And you're limited to the number of meals per day and the meals per week you're allowed to do. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So there's about 15 people in this room. I can sell each of you guys 2 meals in a day, and I'm done for that day. In a week, I can only sell 60 meals. So it's a small scale restaurant. So if you think of what restaurants do, 60 meals even in a day for a restaurant is not enough to survive for them. So 60 meals a week, you can really sell 2 days of 30 meals a day. So you can have like plated dinners that go out for a Friday and a Saturday night, or you can do breakfast or lunch. But that's the restriction. You can't go beyond that. So this was really saying, all right, we're gonna open the door and let you start a restaurant at your house, but we're only gonna keep you as a small one because it takes a lot of infrastructure to run a full restaurant. And if you guys have ever been in the back of a kitchen, the amount of commercial equipment that's needed to run these things is not what you have at your house. You got your fridge, you got your stove, you got a little dishwasher, right? Maybe, or you just have you got your sink. At a kitchen, I mean, they've got full cooks line, full prep lines, walk-in coolers, like they're made to have that kind of volume. A house is not. So this was done because it gets less safe the more food production you're trying to do out of a residential home. Because the bonus of this is you don't have to upgrade your house. You don't need to bring in commercial equipment. They actually say you don't want to because you have to pay the building department to review any upgrades you need to do. But you're also going to be low scale. It does allow for dine-in, pickup, and delivery. So you can create a backyard, front yard, in-house dining experience, and you can serve plated meals. And I've seen a couple of our MEKHOs that we already have permitted that have really taken on the dine-in option. Fortunately, this kind of started around the pandemic, so most people have just done a delivery or a pickup. They haven't opened their homes yet all the way. And it depends. Some people want to do this and be able to go take foods, sell food to their neighborhoods, have people come and pick up a meal, but they may not have the space for the dine-in. So it still gives them an option for that restaurant feel. It does require a health permit. It does get an annual health inspection from us. We will respond to complaint investigations at any of these MEKHOs. If there's a foodborne illness complaint, we're going to go out and investigate those. So it really is just taking our process for a brick and mortar restaurant, scaling it down at a home in a private area. did see a raised hand at the home. Helena, do you want to unmute and ask?
Yeah, hi. So it's kind of a weird question. Maybe I'm just ahead of
Oh,
myself.
I turned my
So-
speakers off, so I don't think I can hear it off of mine.
Hello?
Okay.
Can you hear me? Okay, so I was wondering if I did a the temp food, like, farmers markets, pop-up things. And I also had a MEKHO's permit. Could I do my prep work at home?
No, it's a great question.
Okay,
Sorry about the hot mic there. I'm going to get to that in a couple slides.
okay,
So that's one of the restrictions on a MEKHO of what they're limited to do.
cool, thanks.
But good question. Let me know if I don't cover it in a couple slides, Helena. I'll circle back around to you. So here are the restrictions. You can only operate one per resident. So if you happen to live in a apartment or home and you have roommates, only one of you gets to run the MEKHO. You can't both have your own MEKHOs running out of the same house. We've got the limit on the sales. It also has the same limitation for one full-time equivalent employee. That's not including a family member or a household member. So that's very key, because if your family member doesn't live with you, they can still work for you without being tagged on as one of those employees. So that's a good benefit. Your family doesn't have to live with you to help you out with your business. But if you have a household member, that also is the same. So it gives you a little bit more flexibility to have some people help you with your business and you not have to have that one full-time impact. And then it limits you to the gross annual sales. It does adjust for inflation. So I think it's actually higher than $50,000 right now. Excuse me. And I don't know what it is. There's a whole state process to try to figure out how inflation changes what you're able to do, but it does allow some growth. So here's the limitations. Helena, this is going to answer your question. MEKHOs cannot also be a cottage food operation. You get one or the other out of your home. You can't run both. They cannot cater from their business. They cannot act as a temporary food vendor, and they cannot act as a mobile food vendor until January. Because January is allowing some expansion of a MEKHO to be tied with a mobile food, but there has to be some legislative changes here in the county to approve that. So if I don't touch on that, I'll make sure I circle back around at the end of the day. Because right now our MEKHO program is a temporary program. It's established for 2 years. The Board of Supervisors is our governing body as the Department of Environmental Health. They approved a 2-year temporary program to see how this program works in the county. This was the one thing I've ever seen in our state law that went in with a caveat that said, we're going to put this in state law, but every county has to buy into it. It doesn't go widespread. Cottage food, it's in state law. Everybody has to do it. This one, it only has to be picked up by counties. And I think we only have maybe 8 counties throughout the state that have approved a MEKHO program. And I think there's 40 plus, maybe there's a lot of counties that get small as you get up in Northern California. But there's a lot that don't have this program available to them. So San Diego does have one. It's almost done with its first year. There's only 1 more year left. And then we go back to the board and they decide whether they want to take it on as a full-time program or not at that point. MEKHOs can also not sell to other food facilities. So like the cottage food operation could go sell to their local market. MEKHOs cannot. They're a standalone business and they can't use their home kitchen as a commissary. That ties into where else they can't operate. There will be some allowances if the board approves them to operate mobiles, but you can't do that unless our Board of Supervisors makes that determination. There are menu restrictions. So while it's a home-based restaurant, you can't do raw oysters. You can't do any raw milk products. You can't produce milk or milk products. So this is, you can't make your own yogurt. You can't make your own ice cream. And the specialized processes, that's for people that do smoking or curing of meats. You can't do that out of your house. Those are extremely high-risk products and high-risk processes, and you need a lot more controls in place before you can do it out of your home. The raw oysters and the making ice cream are probably the 2 that most people would want to try to do. Like you want to make your homemade ice cream as part of your dinner service, but you can't. You have to use all purchased products. So some of the things that you still need is this food safety certificate. So you guys are seeing a theme. Everything we do requires food handler training of some capacity. It has to, the food safety certificate has to be done before you get approved by us. So that's going to be the one change that's built into this program is you have to get trained before you get a permit, because we want to make sure most people that start a home-based business are great cooks, but they don't understand the food safety aspects that come with operating a food business. And then everybody else that works and helps out needs that food handler card within 10 days of starting. So it's a small window because we don't want people to be doing things that could lead to a bigger problem or an outbreak. It does allow some flexibility on storage areas. So remember how I said cottage food has to be stored inside of your home? MEKHOs are allowed to store things outside as long as it's in a refrigerator or a freezer. You can't put a shelf up outside, but you can have like a garage freezer or a backyard freezer with a sealable lid with packaged food in there. So that way that is protecting the food. It just was written into the ordinance to allow that. And you can't use any of the sleeping quarters in your room in your house to store it. So if you've got that extra bedroom and you want to convert it to help with your MEKHO, no guests are coming over to visit. It becomes a storage room. So that's the same in our restaurants. With restaurants, you can't have like living quarters in any of your food storage areas too. For obvious reasons, you don't want people that close around food without protections in place. Potable water doesn't really involve a lot of people, but if you're on a well system, there's a lot of testing that needs to be done of your water, both initially and annually, to make sure that water is safe. And we call it potable, it means you can drink it. It doesn't have heavy metals or bacteria in it, which happens sometimes with well systems. So the next slide, I'll have a little bit more detail, but here's our step process for how to get a MEKHO permit. You submit your application documents, you pay your fee, you get your initial inspection, and then we issue the permit. And it's about 3 to 4 weeks to get through this because we've got to review all your paperwork and then we've got to schedule you for your inspection. So that's our safe estimation of time for people to know what it's going to take to get started. So the documents you submit is your health permit application. We have a specific standard operating procedure to be filled out for our MEKHOs. You give us your proposed menu. Now your menu can still change. You know, there's stuff that's seasonal on there, but we kind of want to know, what are you making? Like what kind of equipment and are we going to need to see? Are you putting pizza on your menu? And we're going to wonder, how are you cooking all this pizza for everybody in your oven? Or are you putting a brick oven in the backyard? You need to show that food safety certification. And if you're on the well, you have to have your well water testing at the time of it. And then everything can be done. I mean, the past 2 years, 3 years have made us the digital age. Everything can be submitted to us online now. Here's our fees. So the initial review and your annual permit, so this is kind of your startup cost, is $632. Plus you've got your cost of your food safety training, which is about $150. And then some cities do require a business license. So that'll be your cost for the city. It's up to them on whether they require that. And then the renewal is a little bit lower, same reason as our Cottage food on this one, because we're just coming out to do the inspection to make sure you're still operating the way you did. If you need to update your procedures for any reason, we just charge you our hourly rate to review that. So like I said, if you're making major changes to your menu, we need to re-review that to make sure you're still within the allowances of this program. And I will leave you with the master contact list.
There's one question in the chat for you.
Great. Oh, do you mind reading it for me?
Okay, so now they're wondering if the cottage business can open the door for prep work at home for temp events.
No.
Okay.
Cottage food is you're specifically making. So the question was, will a cottage food business open the door for prepping at temp events? It will not. So like, as you saw, the for the temp event allowances and the cottage food, if you want to go take your packaged product to the temp event, you absolutely can. The only thing you can still sell there is your cottage food product. If you want to sell other products or add, and I think I skipped over this on my slide. If say you do cinnamon rolls and you want to add a delicious real cream cheese frosting to those cinnamon rolls. Well, cream cheese isn't allowed as part of your cottage food operation, which means you can't process it or store it at your house and put it on them before you go. So you have to get an open food temp event permit to do it as part of that. And depending on the scope of it, you might still need a commissary just to store all of the items that aren't approved as your cottage food. So your best bet is just do your cottage food products, because otherwise you might as well just get the temp event permit and sell whatever you want and give yourself a lot more flexibility for the slightly higher price if you already need that commissary. Yes.
So just making sure, what you're saying is that there is no way that you can cook at home and do the temporary food cooking.
That is correct. Even if the new law, so her question is, there's no way you could cook at home and go do a temp event. Yes, that is correct. There is no path to do that from your home-based business. Even with the new changes that are coming in that are allowing some mobile food storage, it does not change that. That is going to stay. Yeah, it will only potentially allow you to do mobile, but that won't go into effect automatically in January. The board has to approve that option for MEKHOs or cottage food. Yeah. Yes.
What's the progress between MEKHO and Airbnb? I heard that there might be a potential that Airbnbs could be MEKHO approved, and then I was thinking maybe I can host private events at approved MEKHO Airbnbs, or have you heard of any?
So her question is do MEKHOs and Airbnbs mesh in any way with us? We do not permit the vacation rentals, Airbnbs, VRBOs. Our department doesn't regulate that, and I don't believe anything in San Diego County regulates those businesses. But to do a MEKHO, it has to be out of your primary residence, so you have to live there. So unless you're Airbnb that's renting out a room and you want to serve a meal, you have to have your MEKHO permit because you now have a dine-in option. So if you're renting out a room in your house and you're operating your MEKHO, that is part of your MEKHO operation, and you're just serving your dine-in, but you're still limited to the meal capacity, right? So if you're hosting somebody and they're there for a week and you're feeding them 3 meals a day, what, 15? So you can serve that one person. That's going to cover about, a third of what you're allowed to do for the whole week. But yeah, you have to live there. So with cottage food and MEKHOs, you have to have it as your primary residence. If you can't have like, oh, I have another rental house, or like, I want to run this out of my friend's house. No, they have to be the operator, and then you would be their employee. I'll go in the back and I'll come up to you.
Okay, I have a MEKHO restaurant currently.
Ah, which one are you?
I'm currently in Family South Cuisine.
Okay.
In San Diego, the city of San Diego.
Good. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm the only restaurant there so far.
Yeah.
Anyway, what if I cook the food.
Yep.
At my home, and let's say a friend of mine wants me to cater her wedding in her backyard.
Yep.
Let's say.
Mhm.
Could I prepare the food at my home and then just take it over there and keep it warm like in the chafing dish?
So her question is can you cater out of a MEKHO? You cannot. So MEKHO is restricted. You're not allowed to do catering out of your MEKHO.
What if I just say it's my friend?
Still running your business. So, and because at that point it's tied to an event. Like if you're just like, hey, I'm a great cook and I feed my friends every once in a while, that's not part of your business model. But you can't go and cater out of your MEKHO. Now you could host the event at your MEKHO.
Right.
So you can become the host site for somebody to come to your place and you just are cooking them the meals. So but you're still capped. You can only have 30 meals for that event. So if they want more than 30 people at their wedding or birthday party, you're done. So it's very challenging, and you need the space to be able to host. So no, you could not take it. And even on your menu, it's why we review the menus on a MEKHO. Your menu cannot be catered like operation. So if you're like, hey, here's I do like a big queso dip platter that can serve 10, that's catering. You're saying, hey, I have like your meal and your appetizer is some queso and chips. That's part of the meal component. Yes.
So kind of piggybacking off of both of their questions.
Yeah.
If I'm a caterer.
Yep.
And I rent the
Airbnb.
Or VRBO.
Mhm.
Can I do that if I'm a caterer?
What's your name?
It's not your main. It's not. So as a catering operation, you want to rent a place and then use it to host an event. I'm trying to see how the business.
Well, like, let's say, okay, so like a scenario, a client reaches out to me and asks if I can cater a party for them.
Okay.
But they would want to maybe either they rent the Airbnb or I rent it for them or something.
For catering, so yeah, I see where you're going. So her question is for catering, can you tie it to a VRBO operation? Catering is event specific. So as long as somebody is placing an order for your catering operation, because a caterer is working out of a commercial kitchen, they're not working out of a MEKHO.
Sure.
So they're working out of a commercial kitchen. Wherever you go and you're hired to take your food, that's catering. That doesn't matter. If you're saying I have a venue and you're a venue host as well as a caterer, right? Then you still have to meet we're just worried about your catering operation.
Just the food safety.
Just the food safety part. So as a caterer, you cater to whatever has been hired to you, and you're still limited on what you can do. So you can't go to the VRBO and do all the prep work in the kitchen, right? So that's the difference is you have to take it already done. It's hard when you're going into a house to cater. You have to kind of just present it on your table to serve out. I'm gonna come up here and I'll come back around over to you. Do I need to finish on the tie on your question or?
That's okay. Just come back.
Okay.
So say
Okay.
has a MEKHO, could she potentially hire me to do cooking and her, like, say she has like her menu option, she was, oh yeah, this week we're offering Ethiopian food. Can she then hire me to come and cook
For her.
for her customers?
So
Book the MEKHO through her, like
Yep.
the bit.
So the question is as a MEKHO, can you bring in guest chefs? I gotcha. You are allowed up to one full-time equivalent employee as a MEKHO. So at the time that you are spent is you are an employee of that MEKHO operation. So if they want to bring you in as one of their cooks or chef, I like the chef. Chef sounds a little bit nicer. It's more respectful to people cooking. If you want to bring in a chef, that's just the time that you spend goes to that full-time equivalent employee. And then they have to potentially pay taxes for the employee and do all that good stuff. So I won't get into that because we don't regulate that part of it. That's up to the business operators to do. I'm gonna go into the back and I got something.
Yeah, so I was gonna say, really quickly, I know I have some people who have to leave, for their class at SDSU.
Let's hit
So-
them first then.
Yeah, okay, so, before anybody has to leave at SDSU or online, from home, is there any, questions that you want to ask before we,
And Helena has her.
okay, Malcolm or Helena?
Malcolm or Helena, is somebody gonna unmute so I can hear them?
Okay, I was asking if the program would have any information about commercial cloud or commissary kitchens that we can use. And if I do end up using a commissary kitchen, but have space dedicated in my home to store my equipment, is that allowed? For example, we have a large extended kitchen that has a separated door, but it's part of the pantry area. Could I store my equipment there, or do I have to store everything at the commissary kitchen?
What kind of operation are you talking about?
Temporary open food.
Okay, if you can mute me again. Great. As a temporary food facility, you are not allowed to do any of it at your home, no matter what. So even if you've got the space at your home, all of your storage for that annual temporary event permit has to be done out of the commercial kitchen. You can't do half and half just because you also may have a MEKHO or something else. They're two completely separate businesses and they have to be kept separate.
That kind of didn't answer my
Hold
question.
on,
My question
hold on,
was-
Elena.
Oh,
Did that answer your question?
no. I'm not trying to, I'm not any of the prep or anything. I'm just saying storage of the equipment can't be at the house either. We have to store that elsewhere.
Yes.
Okay, that answers my question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Malcolm? Malcolm, did you want to unmute yourself?
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
He answered the question.
All right. If you can mute me again real quick.
So I'm gonna, is it, okay, I'm gonna stop the recording from here.
Can I just do one quick thing?
Yeah,
Sorry.
what? yeah,
What is-
what
Helena,
is-
this is for everybody. Equipment and food is what needs to be stored at a commercial kitchen. So I tie those together. I talk about food a lot, but it's all of it. Okay.
Okay,
Good.
perfect. So with that, we're gonna go ahead and end the recording here. And I do want to say, hopefully everybody can hear me. I do want to say, we will